There's nothing wrong with your hearing. I was muted. They forgot to unmute me. They do that on purpose around here sometimes, Arlyn. Again, I'm Edie, here at the Chisholm Trail Heritage Center in Duncan, Oklahoma. Thanks for joining us today for Trail Talk. I'm going to say hi to Sarah. Oh, and Stefan too. Hey, thanks for joining us on Zoom. And Arlyn Brantley is here, hailing from Marlow, Oklahoma, just up the road a ways. Thanks for being our guest today, Arlyn.
Thank you for inviting me.
Yeah, I'm very excited. Arlyn, I'm just going to go ahead and give you a little spoiler alert. He's a teacher, an art teacher, and you will understand that is like the epitome. He is so organized, very organized guest today, way more organized than me. So this will be a show for the ages, I have a feeling.
Thank you.
So Arlyn, I said you're from Marlow. Were you born and raised in Marlow, or how long have you been there?
I grew up at Rush Springs.
Okay.
So my parents had a farm between Rush Springs and Sterling, about halfway, and just grew up in the country. Dad was a teacher, and mom also was in the teaching profession, but he had some cattle on the side, and so grew up, taking care of the livestock and in the country life. Graduated Rush Springs in 2000 and tried to figure out where my next step would be. So in college, I thought I might follow after my parents in education and pursued maybe the administration route.
Like before you ever got in a classroom, you were just going to kind of go.
Yes. Well, when you meet with an advisor, they want you to pick a route, some type of plan on paper to start with. Of course, many people change their majors. And so I'd started an education major, early education or elementary education, and started taking classes. And one of the required classes was art for elementary teachers. And I think I found myself in that class realizing that I was enjoying the little lessons that I was putting together for that. And it had always been a part of my background to have an interest in the arts and to dabble some of this on the side. So it was such a natural fit. And I thought, really, I need to switch my major and see if I could make a career out of the art. And so that was something I kind of came full circle, something that I enjoyed growing up, never seriously considered it, and then found my way back to it.
So art education, high school art, or do you teach art to all ages? Or?
Well, outside of maybe a summer program, the Chisholm Trail Arts Council has an arts explosion. I get to reach some young people there. But yes, through the school year, I have any combination of 9th through 12th graders in the classes there. We have Art 1, Art 2, a pottery class. Usually the seniors, they love that.
Right.
So, yeah, high school.
Yeah, I have some pottery from Duncan High School at my house. So yeah, I know about those pottery classes. So you mentioned Arts Explosion, big community program that the Chisholm Trail Arts Council, or CTAC, puts on every year. You're kind of a regular, aren't you?
Well, I've taught several years, and last year I was not a participating artist, but I am again this year.
Okay,
and the theme of the camp is kind of recycling or reclaimed art. So I think you'll be surprised, those who come out, and we have a show at the end of the week for the community to come look at what's created. There'll be some very interesting projects come out of this camp.
I don't know if enrollment has closed or not, but someone contacted actually the Heritage Center, and I responded earlier this week, and she was able to get her kids enrolled in that. So yes. You can probably go to the Chisholm Trail Arts Council website, Facebook page, something like that, and see what you can find out. It may or may not be closed, but it starts Monday. Or is it another week?
It's going to be the last week of July.
The last week of July, so there probably is time for you to enroll. They may put a cap.
They do. They put a cap, but last time that I saw that they still have some spaces open. So Be sure and don't wait till the last minute to get in on that camp.
Right, right. Yeah. Okay. Good plug for that. Glad you brought that up. So, so you just went straight into art education, but you said that it had always been something you'd kind of dabbled with. Had you always been kind of a doodler or paint, or what kind of things did you do as a kid?
I think some of my first memories were competitions that maybe the teachers would ask if the kids like to participate in. For instance, one was soil conservation, where you try to recognize a need in the environment. And I always had a fascination with animals, wildlife. And so I even have several of the posters from early as kindergarten and first grade and third grade, and the kids in class, they get a kick out of seeing what I drew at that age. And then they think, oh, I wish I could draw what you drew as a child. Those were some of my first memories, entering competitions. And
Well, I remember those like Smokey the Bear,
Yes.
Woodsy the Owl. I'm really dating myself, by the way, by saying those, but those, I mean, I remember those kinds of competitions. Yeah.
So
I never thought about that as kind of a kicking off place, but for you, and I bet for a lot of other people, they realized that they liked it and what they produced was pretty good, you know, in comparison maybe, or something. So
I think probably like many people, they may think of a teacher that really encouraged them or found an ability or something that they had a special talent and really kind of nurtured that. And I remember I had a second grade teacher, Joy Wright. She kept work until high school graduation. And as I graduated senior year, she had a folder of all the artwork that I'd kept from second grade.
my
And so
goodness.
there were people that encouraged and kind of recognized and maybe instilled in me that this was something that I really should hang on to.
Mhm.
And I had two different art teachers in high school, just worked out that the faculty turned over. And so I had a different teacher freshman year and senior year, and both had very different backgrounds. One was very heavy into drafting and architecture, which I loved because I was fascinated with the idea of designing, you know, your dream home and what could an architect create, and would get on the computer and design all this stuff. So that really tied in with some of my interests. And then senior year, I had a teacher who was very crafty, very hands-on, just thinking outside the box. And so a whole different route. We had the very controlled, you know, mathematical, technical,
Right.
and then we had the kind of free form. And so I think in that sense, I probably had a good diverse background in high school.
Oh, right. Yeah, for sure. And
relate to
so in college, besides your art education classes, did you take any art classes, or have you had art
Sure.
courses?
So I think most colleges will have an art major and an education minor. So if you're art ed, you actually spend a lot of time in the studio with your painting, drawing, ceramics, life drawing, your foundation that really builds your ability. Obviously, you want to have some talent to share with the students. So
Right.
they stress that, and then your educational components or strategies of how to be an effective teacher, and you get into student teaching and spend time in the classroom. So
Okay,
combination
so
of both.
it's like that. I was not aware of how that degree would be, you know, formatted or whatever, but
I think it was probably about probably 35 to 40 hours in education and about 90 in the
in
arts.
arts,
So
wow, so really heavy.
it's
in
really
the arts. That's-
probably, or two-thirds
Right.
art,
that's-
third education.
That's really good though. I mean, so you graduated, did you go right into teaching?
I did. It was interesting. I had an advisor who was very proactive, and he thought that he knew of a person teaching in this area and thought that it might be worth reaching out. And so I contacted Comanche Public Schools, and they had an art teacher who was kind of on her way out, and they were going to be looking for a replacement. And I thought I would really like to relocate back close to home. And so I called them in my spring semester of senior year, and sure enough, their art teacher was about to leave, and it worked out in an interesting way that she needed 6 more months, which meant August through Christmas.
Right.
And the school decided to hire me, and we team taught, which was another almost like a student teaching experience. Got to work alongside with her for that first half of my first year, and transitioned in my first year at Comanche. So
Wow.
I taught 9 years at Comanche, and I guess I finished 8 at Marlowe, so I'm 17 in to teaching in this area.
Very good. Wow. Well, that sounds like a wonderful career. Now, we have some paintings behind us here. Let's take a minute and look at these, because you are not a professional artist, and that is your source of income. Obviously, education is really your passion.
Yes.
But you do create art. Now, you mentioned that you like to do things besides paint, like building koi ponds and that sounds like the architectural side of, you know, your the way you probably think and produce things. But that you know, so you do like hands-on kind of things. But I mean, you brought some really beautiful paintings with you today. So
Thank you.
how does this work into your kind of, I don't know, just who you are as an artist? You know, there's more than just the teacher, Arlyn. There's there's more to you than that. So
Yes.
talk to us about these.
So I think part of what viewers may notice in the paintings that I've selected and brought here are that the theme is kind of similar, very much outdoors, almost isolated places. They may notice there are no people, there's not a lot of commotion, maybe almost wilderness or remote locations. And I think because I have a love for the outdoors, you mentioned nature, that I love landscaping, working outdoors. I've spent most of I guess all of my life in Oklahoma, and I love to travel, but to get out in places that are very scenic, and I love the Wichita Mountain Wildlife Refuge area. So interesting to just see the little different environments there. But some of these are actually inspired by some trips that my wife and I took. For instance, shortly after being married, we went up into Glacier National Park, spent some time in Canada around Banff and Jasper National Park. And so this actually comes from one of the mountain lakes there. And some of the photographs and places we visited, and they're so majestic and so serene and just this wild beauty. And I think that is part of the inspiration, is trying to capture some of the vantage points, looking off, at a mountain peak, or looking down a trail, a mountain trail, looking off at an old abandoned barn and farm.
Right.
So these are probably tied into the American Southwest. I think I have probably a lot of influence from some early American artists, as in like Thomas Moran, Bierstadt, artists that would go out and kind of document the American West and show these beautiful locales that really were untouched, undiscovered for a lot of people at their time. Of course, the history, I guess, would be that helped kind of lead the creation, spur and lead on the creation of some of our first national parks and some of these places that I've gone to visit. So that's part of where I draw the inspiration. Now, style-wise, these are an attempt to kind of explore a form of impressionism. You might notice they're not entirely photorealistic. I do appreciate realism and artists who can really hone in on the techniques that it takes to make a completely photographic image. These actually have a little bit of blur distortion, and you may notice the application of brush strokes is a little bolder, a little thicker. And so I think during this time of this series, is an attempt to emulate what the Impressionists were doing at trying to capture a scene, but maybe not capture every tiny detail. Now,
I noticed you've got a little pointillism going on up here, and if you caught the pointillism lesson yesterday, then you will recognize that. But that was something that we talked about, how Impressionism and then pointillism kind of came out of that our brain takes the colors and makes the forms, and so you don't, as the artist, you don't have to create those sharp lines and those details.
Well, I think you mentioned the clouds, and I think if I could perfect a technique, I would like to have a sense of movement almost with the dots, and the lights and darks contrasting, or maybe the lights and darks in the trees should, if I could perfect this, maybe create kind of a rhythmic effect. View in the picture would be more than a realistic view to have kind of that effect. And so this is an attempt, like I say, not anything that has an exact system. Some areas are maybe a little more blended or detailed. I think of myself probably as a little bit of a crossover, like wanting to do Impressionists, but not really wanting to commit fully, which is funny because the Impressionists are so loose and so free form. And so I probably came from a very tight, structured, mathematical, analytical background. And I find myself gravitating and wanting to do this. And this is how it turns out.
Yeah, that's funny. You're this is the logical Impressionist right here. We'll make a whole new art form here, a way of doing that. Well, I love the colors that you use, the really earthy tones, and just the way you've got it all blended together. It makes me want to go visit these places. I don't know. I mean, really.
I think I'm drawn to that, drawn to times of day where it's early morning, late evening, maybe not full intensity of color. Now, obviously that doesn't count here because we're looking at a glacier lake and the melt, and they're turquoise, beautiful little gems, up in the mountains. And so the colors are a little more extreme here, but I do gravitate rusty reds and browns and tans and the pale tones.
Yeah, well, these are very beautiful. Do you have these in your home?
They are, yes. And
So I guess you'll have to go to Arlen's house to see his art up close and personal.
I haven't put price tags, to sell because they're kind of personal experiments. Maybe my confidence is not there enough yet to just throw it out and say, oh, would you like to purchase? But maybe someday when I have a little extra time and really feel confident that this is going to be attractive and appealing, might put some out there for sale.
Right. Well, so I think that this is a good time for us to go from, your creation to how those of us who are not, we're either like artist wannabes, or, we have like this secret thing that, oh, I would really like to be able to do that. Or maybe we just kind of experiment. I think you brought some really great demonstration or lesson kind of things with you that we could show the folks watching, and maybe give some people some ideas of where to just jump in.
Sure. I hope that you will find some of these interesting. I know that in an art classroom, there is a perception among the teenagers that this will be overwhelming, that can I do this? Will I make a good grade? And I think early in the year, I try to relax and calm them that art, it should not be intimidating. It should be an outlet, a way to express thoughts and your imagination, and we all do that differently. We don't process the same idea the same way, and so when they're coming out of a math or a science or a course that all the information is just written in stone, everyone has to replicate the same thing, and then you think about art. Can I do it? Not everyone can replicate the same, even if you try to attempt the same style. If you have a class of 20 kids and you all try the same thing, it never fails. You'll have a variety. So letting them recognize everyone has an individual approach. Mm-hmm. Everyone has the capability of art. I think it's in our human instinct. Early back, a cave artist, they were trying to preserve something of their time. They wanted to reach out and share what they were experiencing with others. I think art's fundamental to just our need as humans to relate and connect. Mm-hmm. So I think if we are able to show you some ways that maybe you're able to try at home, without the pressure of being in a formal setting of a class or attending an art school. These are things that probably very minimal cost. You could go to the dollar store, pick up some of these materials in your downtime. Of course, COVID has hit. We have a lot of people staying at home, maybe even at work at home, but you need a break time to get away and kind of escape. Parents who are looking for summer activities for their children. Here's a great way for parents to connect with their kids is through art. So no pressure on these projects today. These are coming from an art classroom geared toward younger people, and anyone can do these.
Awesome. So do we need to take a seat now?
Sure.
I don't know if Arlyn is I paint when I stand up, I teach better, or if so, we're gonna park it here. I'm excited about this. I'm ready to. So where do you want to start? You brought a lot of different things.
I think maybe not focusing on art as so much a finished product. We want to think about a beautiful painting to hang on the wall, or a photograph that I can have enlarged and put over the mantle. And that may be wonderful to get to the point that you have things that you're very proud of. But most things begin with small steps. If you're an athlete and you want to be a basketball player, and you sit and you perfect your form of how to lock the ball into place and how to follow through with your shot, or, learning to bat, and I'm using sports as an analogy, but it could be playing a guitar and the right fingering. Art's much the same way, a very repetitive process. You have to begin with some basics. So I think don't overthink it. Let art be something fun. As I say, an outlet. I wanted to approach today with a sketchbook, which basically is kind of a little journal or a practice book for someone interested in art. Now, these could be purchased for just a few dollars, most under $10, but a place that you can keep all your work. And I think it's important.
It's kind of like if someone writes in a journal,
sure,
someone might just draw in this journal.
And I think it's important that it's a way to keep a collection together, because if you sit down and do one thing, it may wind off on the cabinet or may wind in the trasher. And so without feeling too much pressure, I could flip through and show you things from my sketchbook. Some I think are unusual, or I might not want to share with everyone. But what I have is a collection of where I was at in that time in my life. And this was how to say exploring. Now, if these were everywhere and I'd lost them, I wouldn't be able to go back and experience where I was as an artist at this time. So in theory, over years, your sketchbooks would improve. You'll be able to recognize the difference in how you have grown as an artist. These would be a great way to get feedback and criticism if you were looking to a professional artist. Hey, this is something I'm interested in. Would you look at my work, look at my sketchbook? Or maybe a student that's going to apply to college and they want to have some feedback for an art scholarship. Maybe a sketchbook or a portfolio would be a great place for that.
And so is that something that you help your students with? Do you have some who come through and they would really like to pursue art in some form, and so you kind of give them some honest criticism? I mean, that to me, that would be a hard thing to do.
It is, and I think probably one of the best ways to talk to someone, if you have a different point of view, is to find something that you actually do admire. You maybe start with a positive, you try to build them up. Obviously, I look at my job as an educator as someone who is producing a graduating class of 90% artists. There may only be one or two that come out of that class that really pursue this. So I try to focus on encouraging and making art a positive experience, because this is something they could always come back to later in life. And surprisingly, now that you mentioned that, as I counted off this year, the students who mentioned what they were going to continue doing in their career, we actually had about 10% of our graduating class that were going into an arts related field. Not in a gallery, not necessarily an art teacher, but we did have one that wanted art education, one that was in theater performing arts. We had some that are interested in tattoo artistry, which it would be in kind of apprenticeship and learn to do that. We had and I won't go into all, but at least 6 out of about 60 graduating. So I thought that's a pretty good percentage.
That is very much. Wow.
Yeah, sketchbook could be simple things. And I wrote a list here. If you don't know where to start, find some common things. These studies on water, how simple. We've got a bottle of water here. If you spilled the water on the table, what would that look like to draw? What if you could sit your pet down and draw your pet? Maybe sit outside and draw your front door, how you'd enter your house. Maybe you have it decorated with seasonal decor, or maybe you could draw a plate of food at a meal. You sit down at dinner time. We have people that probably post it to
put it on their Instagram or Facebook.
They're doing an instant post, but stop and draw it. Maybe set up a simple still life, or draw your favorite pair of shoes, anything, jewelry, sunglasses. Just start somewhere. And that's my goal in the next little bit of time, is to just show you, here's some ideas. If you're at home thinking, in a sketchbook, I'd never thought about that, I might try this. What are some places to start? And these are specific assignments. If you see something that you like, you can take these. If you want to pursue sketchbook further, you can purchase books. This one, Creative Doodling and Beyond, for someone who's interested in just free form artistry, but also goes into individual assignments and projects to encourage someone. Here's almost like a crossover combination of scrapbooking. So someone that's interested in a little bit of maybe a hobby that they already have, but maybe tying it more into the art.
Just adding some little sketchy kind of things to it, little doodles and things.
So the first one is basically just a cutout from a calendar. And maybe you have old discontinued calendars that you just throw in the trash can, and I might encourage you to save those. Sometimes beautiful images. So here I just cut out the cardinal, and maybe it helps you to have something close by to observe and draw from. Maybe you think, I can't really go from 3D to 2D on my paper. Maybe start with the 2D. And some basic things that you could look for. Maybe you struggle with just hand-eye coordination. I'd love to draw, but I can't get my hand to do what my eye is telling me that I'm seeing. So maybe pick a place, find somewhere on the bird. And if you wanted to start with a contour, what you would do is pick a place and try to follow the edge, and try to not pick up your pencil, but just keep following that edge that you're seeing. Try to move your pencil about the same speed that your eye is moving, or move your hand about the same speed as your eye. And with time, you will be able to replicate to some degree of proficiency what you're seeing. And this is simply called a contour drawing. Now, some how to draw books would not have you start this way. They would start out and you'd find the basic shapes. Here's the bird's head, here's the bird's body, here's kind of the shape of the tail. And certainly you could begin this way. But just for hand-eye coordination, this is a great place for someone to just test and see There, I picked up my.
I was gonna say, when you pick up, I'd never thought about that, because when you pick up your pen, it's like you lose that flow or that movement, and it's hard to pick it back up, because I've tried to do that before, but I've never followed my pen, just one motion, taking it all the way.
I think part of this
That's
comes from maybe the anxiety or being unsure of yourself. And so they want to stop and check and stop and check and stop and check. And this goes back to just learning some of your processes. At some point, go ahead and follow through and become more sure of yourself. And it's okay if it's a little off. That will come in time the more that you do. But if I were to do the same thing and pick up and start and pick up and start, the quality of your work immediately is different. And as you say that, in addition to contour, there's a blind contour where you actually don't even look at your paper. So imagine you have this water bottle sitting out, and I decide I'm going to follow the top of the water bottle and come down the cap. And then here's the edge and here's the label, and I've not looked at my paper yet. It may look funny, but I'm trying to capture all of these edges. And so a blind contour helps develop some of that confidence by making yourself not look at your paper back and forth, back and forth.
And making your hand do what your eye is seeing, making your hand without you having to watch it.
It's always funny to do this with high school kids, because they laugh, they can't take it seriously. I looked, they just never had that challenge to simply focus. And, an artist, obviously their goal is to replicate what they're seeing. And how can you do that without some really extreme focus and really translating what is it exactly that I'm seeing? Sure, we can do a quick version of it, but that's where your discrepancies happen, because you were not really focusing and seeing it as you should.
Right.
So
and it's probably a little bit different from the one art class that's required to graduate from high school versus the second or third art class that students take, right? In how much focus they have or how serious they can be.
I usually tell that to students who really enjoy the first year of art. If you like this, hang on, stay in the second year, because we can spend so much more time. We've established a lot of the basics. We don't have to go back and work through all of that, and they can just kind of get in the zone and really follow through to completion. A lot of what we do in the first year is introductory. Some will really take to it, some will enjoy it, some will not. But those that do, they'll find the second year they can really perfect their craft and have more time to work on it.
Yeah.
So the second assignment or second project, we won't say an assignment.
He's such a teacher.
It just happens naturally. Maybe find you a piece of a picture in a magazine, photograph, cut it out. And this would be a good creativity assignment for a child even. So here we have a little gnome, little lawn character, and also cut out of probably the same calendar as the cardinal. So think of what could be outside this space that you cut down. So this is a good challenge you to think outside the box, in this case, outside the picture. So what if I decide, well, it looks like we cut off the little ferns here, and I'm going to go out and I'm going to continue drawing some of this fern effect because I think that's what had been here. Now, maybe eventually we get outside the fern. I think, oh, I'd like to have a big tree coming out in this space, and fork the branches here and come up, and maybe way back in the distance, maybe back in here, we want to have some really wild bushy plants, or maybe in the distance we have indication of some clouds or some type of scenery back behind the tree. But this allows you to maybe stop and think about something that is not so literal. I have to take an exact copy. Maybe you're inspired by that. And this is what artists do. They get inspiration from one thing and they try to make their own version or go their own direction with it. So there's a good imaginative creative assignment.
I really like that assignment. I think that one's fun.
It really, some of it can be very humorous too. We get a lot of advertising commercials that it seems like the stranger, the more unusual, honestly, like lame or silly they can be, the more memorable. So you find some funny pictures in the magazines and can have a joke with the art too.
Especially if you have a series of commercials with like one character, and have that character in all these different places. And so that's kind of the same. That's fun.
Have the insurance,
guy. I was
the
thinking
Geico
about
lizard
him
or
too.
what is it? The emu.
Oh, yeah.
So if maybe those are of interest to you, here's another one that's a real favorite among the students in school, is to actually do a portrait. And a portrait is very daunting, okay, because you have all of the proportions. The ability to create an exact likeness comes from your ability to get all of the measurements and the proportions in place. Otherwise, there's always something off. You've probably seen that if you try to do a self-portrait, you think something's a little off.
Yeah.
So this actually looks like Judy Garland, probably a throwback picture to a young Hollywood celebrity. And so what I've done is I've cut the picture through the center, and as we would do in class, you can slide it to the side and then replicate the missing half. Now I'm right-handed, so I actually removed the right section so that as I draw it, I can draw and not have to move my hand. If you were left-handed,
that's smart. Yeah.
move the other way. So basically, you would be finding a point, much like your blind contour, and finding a place to start. And so here we'll pick up with her. I can't hardly draw with a mechanical pencil. Too much pressure. We'd follow the edge of the hair, the bangs, come down the side. There's going to be the face. And obviously I'm doing this much faster than I would be if I were taking my time. So we got hair, here and here, the shoulder coming over.
And so you're still kind of following this side rather than trying to mirror that side.
Yes. So, and you,
But it
you can
still has
see
to
that
kind of match
it will
up.
give you a place to start and stop. And so
Mhm.
you'll have to follow those. It's almost like if you ever did a grid picture as a child and you take this square and you copy over to that one, and maybe it's a puzzle, you don't know what it's going to make at the end, but you follow your points of reference to start and stop. And then when you get done, you'll notice that you'll start completing the image. Now, one thing that's really interesting about doing this is as you get further into the picture, you can actually slide the picture back and forth and check your work. So maybe I want to know, am I close on the face? Well, where did I mess up? So they enjoy that way to check their work. So this is kind of a.
Those are really great tips. And I mean, super easy things that you could get anywhere. You could find pictures like that. I love those, Arlyn. I appreciate you sharing those.
So another easy way to kind of test your creativity, maybe sit down and just think outside the box with some common everyday letters, numbers, symbols. In this instance, I've just written out the letters of the alphabet. And this actually is a bit of a challenge for anybody because it takes some time to stop and think. But you have to imagine the shape of each letter maybe as an object. Well, what does an A look like? Maybe you look at the A and you say, well, that kind of looks like the end of a sharpened pencil. And so you come back and you draw. You take your time and draw it in. And maybe you decided that your idea there was going to be to draw.
Wow, look at that.
And you can label it, if you think, oh, they're not going to know what I do, you come back as you go through and label them. Maybe you get over to B and we say, oh, I see butterfly wings there. And so we have an elaboration on the shape of the bee that turns into a butterfly somehow. Okay, and I don't know really what design we do here, but just something simple. We've got two of them. And you'll be surprised at the things that come to your mind. Maybe we see a banana, or maybe we see a bow, like for bow and arrows. And sometimes you'll get stuck and think, I don't know what this one's going to be, move on, catch another letter and come back to it later. And that's a really good way to kind of think outside the box.
And a really good practice, a way for you to just practice, I would say just creativity, just, spur them on. I bet people who would do this exercise would surprise themselves at how creative they could be.
I think that's one of the hardest parts of my job is how do you teach creativity? It's probably something that we're not challenged enough to do, is to think of an alternative to the usual way of thinking. I mean, it's easy to just go to the standard that we've always seen. It takes more work to stop and think, well, what if I tried that another way, or what would it look like if? And I think that's why the arts are so important in our school, is to get kids to think in these creative ways, because they will be the innovators, those who discover a new process, the ones who are thinking of the next big hit, the item that sells, the innovations in technology and photography and music and that's.
Right, and that's a really good, I'm glad you mentioned that, because you guys all know that the first thing that gets cut in school is always the arts programs. And it is so important for kids, for brains, to use both sides. And you don't get that in your everyday, rigors of the reading and the math and the science. You have to have that other side of your brain inspired and moving and thinking and doing things to just fully, engage. I think maybe the whole brain, and then who knows where a student can go once they've had those experiences.
I think one very basic way, but very important way to look at this is, what has an artist not created around you? If you look around, an artist designed my clothing, a craftsman built this table, an artist framed the pictures, they selected the color of paint on the walls, they designed the carpet. An artist is everywhere. How could we not
Such
have
a
artists?
great example.
So,
Wow,
we
I love
have
that.
artists who are florists and are bakers, and they do t-shirt printing and design, and we have auto body collision repair, and we have
Well,
website
architects,
designers.
I mean,
Yes, so-
architects, every building, every highway, all
Yes.
of those things.
So it's
Yeah.
important to know the math and the science, but then someone to put it into practice that's
Mhm.
your artist in many cases, and they don't
Wow.
even realize it.
Wow, that's great.
So
All right,
maybe,
so now you're gonna do a little painting.
maybe something that would be a different direction to go with the journal. Maybe you'd like something that's a little more serious approach. If you saw these other assignments, think, yeah, that might be good for my kids, but I'm not really into kind of the little design stuff. I want to actually draw. Think about taking a sketchbook with you when you go on vacation, or maybe if you have a favorite place that you frequently visit, and start capturing that with your drawings. This again is reference from one of the calendar pictures, but I thought I would show you that you might start out with a loose sketch, drawing in some of the scenery that you think you want to become part of your picture, make some of your edits, modifications for how this will come together, and then go to a store and buy you a fine-tipped Sharpie permanent marker, and then come back once you have established your space, some of your beginning detail, and come back with an outline that will allow you to make your work more permanent. Now, the pencil obviously erases very quickly, allows you to make changes, but you're really committing when you get into the outlining with the pen. But what we do when we wind up with a completely finished pen and ink drawing, pen and ink sketch, you have an opportunity to come back and do things, either do, if we want it to all be pen work, you could come back in with some mark making techniques and say, we want to establish a shadow area being thrown back. You could come back with your textures or come back with your shading. And certainly some of this could be done with the pen, but you also have the option to come back and add some color. And I think if someone's, oh, I've got a trip coming up to New York City, or I'm going to go over to see the ocean, see the beach, take you a little easy to assemble and tote travel bag. I mean, some of this would fit in just a little small pouch or
Right.
small container. We're not talking
Right.
about set up an easel, a big canvas, something very convenient, because it should be low stress. You could buy even small sketchbooks, smaller than what I have here, sets for paint, but then come back in at some point and you say, well, I wonder what this would look like as a watercolor. And here I'm laying in the water for a wash. If you don't know this, if you wet your paper before you add your watercolor, it allows it to dissolve and soak in without staining the paper so heavily.
Oh, there's a little tip. I didn't know that.
So if I came back in with a little blue and I want to drop that and I carry it through, maybe as it bleeds, now there it goes. You see the
Oh,
movement. Well, maybe if I don't get carried away with this, also help replicate maybe clouds or some movement in the sky. Okay.
Oh.
Now, one suggestion, if you think you wanted to go this direction with your pen and ink sketches in your sketchbook, you'll have to be knowledgeable about the type of sketchbook that you purchase up front, because this is actually a thicker paper, and the weight of your paper will make a big difference in the results. This has already kind of had a light wrinkle because of moisture in the paper, but just be careful that you don't pick out the super
Oh.
cheap type of paper because it will not be water absorbent. And you could even buy a watercolor sketchbook
Right.
if this was really what you wanted to
Right.
do. But just within, and this is fun to just sit and play around with it. You know, in just a few minutes, you could have you transformed sketch from your sketchbook into a watercolor. Maybe a good idea for greeting card or birthday card, or maybe just little notes that you want to pass along. Such a simple thing to do,
That's
but you could
fun.
share your art with someone else.
My great grandmother she was a bit of an artist, but you said greeting cards. Every card she ever gave us was like a manila folder that she had saved because she didn't throw anything away, and she would cut. And so some of the cards would be little tiny, some of them would be big, but she would always use like a pastels or paint or something, and she would make a picture and then write some little verse on the inside of it for us. And so that always makes me think of that.
Well,
But it was so, they're so precious to us.
Anything that's personal, you know,
Yeah.
someone took the time, they obviously thought enough of you, they wanted to share something that they personally made. That's a keepsake. Yeah, you
Right.
can't, how can you throw that away? It is
Yeah.
precious to you.
Yeah.
So,
I did lots of
Yes.
crafts at her house on the cutout of a cereal box on the inside. So I know
would you
you,
like to see anything else?
well, I think that, do you want to jump over here to
We
these
have
or?
calligraphy or Zentangle or both?
Oh,
So, yes.
let's do both.
Okay.
Calligraphy, I am so fascinated with calligraphy.
So this is another idea for a sketchbook. If you don't have a desire to create scenery, maybe to create designs, and we'll get into designs in a minute with the Zentangle. Maybe you just think, I just like to improve my handwriting. You know, I've always had maybe the desire to create something, which now we have computers technology to do it automatically
Right,
for us.
right.
Create something that looks like a hand embellished invitation, you know, an announcement to a wedding or to a birthday party or a Christmas party. I wish I could do it. That's very much like your hand created pictures. Now pair them up and then you'd really have a gift.
Oh, right.
So this was printed out just from the internet. You could search calligraphy styles. This is an italic style font. Italics usually have a slant. They have a lean to them. This particular printout is helpful because it tells you some steps, and they have small numbers and arrows to tell you which steps to draw the letters. And this will not come easy the first time you do it. This would take practice over and over, and eventually some of it will become repetitive, and you can copy the technique and it will start flowing versus maybe the first time you try it and you're trying to experience, well, how do I hold the pen and what does it do? Some of that
Right.
becomes a little more obvious whenever you've had an experience with it. For example, the tip of a calligraphy marker is not a point. A calligraphy marker has kind of a wedge or a chiseled tip. So if
Do
you've
those-
never, yes, these actually dollar store purchase, very cheap way. Now, if you want to do the old traditional style, you can buy the little wells of ink and buy the different nibs, which are a metal tip, and you plunge it into the ink and you actually are working back and forth. This is so nice for a beginner because they
Right.
don't
I
have
was
to
gonna
control the
say,
mess.
I cannot imagine starting out.
Sure.
But how cool would it be if you could write like that? So show them what the tip of that looks
Okay,
like.
so if I were to hold this down and maybe you
Can
can
you
see.
zoom in
I'm
on
trying.
that, Tina? There you go. Just kind of show the
Okay.
difference between
And when I roll
those.
it, you can maybe see the difference. And one way to test,
It's-
you can take, and this, it actually gives you instructions on how to hold it. You want to relax your hand so that the pen is on about a 45-degree angle to the table or to the surface. And also when you're writing, you want to try to write at about a 45-degree angle on your paper. So if this were 90 degrees, here is my 45. So the motion I make
Look at him
with
breaking
the
out
tip
that
of the
algebra.
pen
I mean,
is
not
on a
the
45-degree angle.
geometry into the,
And I think if a person can not move their hand and let the tip of the pen do the work for them, they will be amazed what happens just with the motion. You may want to play with the pen for a few minutes. For example, when I try to draw a circle, okay, well, what happens there? Well, it made two thin sides and two thick sides. How did that happen? Because as I was dragging it this way, it used the thin side of the pen, but as it rounds out, it gets thicker. And then now it reverses to the thin side and I pull it up and it goes thick again. So understanding that the tip of the pen is doing all this work for you, thick, thin, the pen will do the work. So don't move your hand around, just relax it and try to keep the 45-degree angle and keep that italicized. That these letters should have a slant. So every time you write one, try to not work back and forth between up and down slant.
Right.
So this is a very rushed way to show calligraphy, but if someone were interested, there's so much. You can get kits. You can order these off the internet, beginning kits. They will actually come with little how-to workbooks, guidebooks, lined paper, tell you kind of the beginning steps, much more than what I will. But this is something that would be a good sketchbook assignment. So you start through, here's the capital A. I'm going to rest my hand and try to not move it. So we're going to come up to the top, stretch it out. Here's the other side, and here is the middle. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, about 4 steps on the A. 1, 2, 3, 4. Didn't have room to make the little curl there. So 1. You could even do it this. You can do them out of order, but this is interesting because it will tell you probably the most economical or time-saving way to make it. So we'll skip over to the B. So the B, we go 1, 2, 3. Okay, the C, 1, 2. There's the D, 1, 2. So if you can try to keep the same system, you will get a little bit of repetition
in your angle.
In the angle. And in time, if this becomes your nature, and you remember, an artist is really paying attention and memorizing shapes. And so when you memorize the shapes of letters or through practice.
I've seen on like movies or shows that if someone wants to like truly, what's that called when you forge someone's signature,
Yes.
that you turn it upside down. An artist would do it because you turn it upside down and then you replicate the shapes of the signature and then you turn it over. It's supposed to look the same. Not that I would say that you would be a forger of any signatures, but
You actually mentioned
is
something that would be another good sketchbook assignment, which would be to challenge yourself to find a picture, and instead of drawing it the traditional way, flip it upside down. And as you draw it, what you'll find out is that you're paying attention to the lines and the shapes, and you're not thinking about, oh, there's a boat, there's a sun, there's a
dock.
Yeah.
That happens to me
Really,
all the time.
your focus goes to the individual components and not the whole. And everybody's always worried about the whole. Is this going to look like a face? Is this an animal? And you stop. You really go to the basics. So that's a good assignment.
Interesting. Look at that. Didn't even know. That looks really good. Did you see how you?
Yes.
Man,
So that would take a little practice, but there's another good sketchbook
very
project.
fun. I love all these little easy lesson things you brought. Now this is Zentangles, right?
Okay, this will be the last thing I share with you today. So if you have not enjoyed anything that maybe is just kind of free form experimental, some of these are creative, but if you want something that's really just oozing out of your brain, Zentangle is probably not thinking ahead of time about what you're doing. It just comes to you at the spur of the moment. And that's hard for an artist like me who's very analytical. You want to control and have everything be planned and thought out ahead of time. But I think Zentangle really has a basis in kind of art therapy, and art should be more for relaxation, and it should not be stressful. And so someone who approaches Zentangle is someone who likes to doodle. They're the one that doesn't care. They just kind of let the thoughts meander, and you're sitting and you get bored listening to someone talk, or you just find yourself daydreaming and it just happens. That's really more the Zentangle mode. So this has blown up in the last decade. Zentangle has become huge, and this is probably not a new idea for many viewers, but Zentangle basics, you could look again for little how-to guidebooks to get started. With this being art therapy, the idea is if you had 5 minutes where you could take off a break from work, or you really got stressed out and you need to find a moment of just kind of calm relaxation, how can art be a part of that? So on a very small scale, you could cut out some small piece of cardstock, maybe 3 or 4 inches square, something that might fit in a container. I guess if you're a guy and you don't have a very large container, maybe cut them a little smaller where they could fit in a wallet, something that's even convenient, but something very small, accessible. And then when you just have a few minutes, you're going to sit down and create kind of free form art that's based more out of design than it is maybe referencing reality. And just as an example, you know, we talked about letters and how to think outside the box with the letters. If I wrote out my name Brantley and I wanted to change this into an artistic version, the steps would be create the perimeter or the outline of the object that I wanted to fill. Then you have to break down the space into a few individual areas that can be patterned. So a pattern is something that's repetitive. You figure out your idea and carry it over and over and over, and then it starts matching. It's a pattern.
So that's what these unusual lines on the letters
Yes.
are. Okay, I was
So
curious
the
about
first
that.
step to create the outline, and then just for interest to break these into maybe at least 3 or 4 different areas within each letter. Then you come back in with your artistic patterns and ideas, free form, and see some of these are not even really related. Some look like they tie into nature, and some look maybe a little bit more like this. There's almost like a basket weave pattern. This looks like dripping wax or something oozing, and just almost anything that comes to your
There's a
imagination.
spider web. I don't know if you can see that, and the little spider.
Probably
from it.
something else that is good is to not feel locked into your boundaries. Obviously, I wanted to create the effect of a B and an R, but that does not mean that I have to stay within the line. You know, we want to, oh, you colored outside the line. Shame, shame. You know, an artist is probably not worried about the edge as much. In fact, I think it actually adds a little bit more detail and dimension when you allow your pattern, if it has an interesting edge, to become the shape of the letter, instead of just the predetermined boundary.
And so do you sketch it? I mean, so as therapy, do you sketch it with a pencil or do you just go in with the Sharpie?
So most of them are a commitment to just go ahead and do it in permanent.
You're committed.
You know.
That's what I like to hear.
It's like we started out, don't try to make everything a finished product. If you can't enjoy just the act of creating art, then you're trying to make such a hard, rigorous process for you that it could stress you out and it doesn't become fun. Now, obviously, there are artists who commit to very, very detailed focused, and they're working professionally and they have expectations of their clientele, and you know, that's different. But someone that just wants to enjoy the beginning, the basics, needs to have some fun with it, or they'll wear out.
Right, yes,
So
for sure.
in addition, you know, to this book, you can buy, I guess I'll say almost adult coloring books, if you will.
I think that's what they call them. That's what my daughter calls them.
These would be great sources to find ideas, and then you just pick a place that you want to pick up another pattern. I haven't finished in some of these. Maybe if I see something here that I like, maybe we'll go into these that look like little spirals. So up here on the A, if I wanted to start out, and I'm gonna just start building in spirals, they kind of look like
Snails.
peppermints or snails or
Snail
something.
shells,
Yeah,
what they look like.
lollipops, I guess.
Yeah.
And what I was saying about the edge, to me, I think that's a little bit more interesting when I let that just happen. And so there's going to become maybe the edge that, now if I want to lock it in there and slow down, I
Just
can.
because you have another area, you're going to
Sure.
add something different.
Or maybe if I want, maybe if I want to add in something along the edge before I get to that barrier, that's fine. There are really no rules. It's just kind of free form. If I wanted to come in here and say, well, I think I would like to break up that edge at least a little more, you know, it's totally up to you as the artist. Some of it can be patterned with, you mentioned pointillism or dots. Can you have shading, hatching, cross hatching, you know, their techniques.
Well, and there'd be like a way to practice those techniques too, you know, shading. I loved how you use the dots to shade. And that's what we were talking about yesterday. You put them closer together to create the shadow effect, and with more negative space, you know, it's not so much.
If I can
So,
reach into
yeah,
this,
sure.
I'll show you.
Go ahead.
These are some artist works. I'm not the original artist here, but we mentioned working with the watercolor. Go back in, watercolor your Zentangle or colored pencil.
Oh, that's fun.
Combine that technique, or maybe you like the black and white. What about using your shading, your techniques, practicing go back to your drawing, blending, shading. Can you use other Sharpies or larger tips that help you fill it in faster? Here's just kind of some fall leaves patterns.
Oh, I love that. That's
Student
fun.
projects here, they loved this assignment when we just took something that, you know, just an owl. Just a little
Okay,
piece of
and then they
nature.
just kind of make their own
So
version.
obviously an animal that has individual features, scales, feathers, stripes, natural patterns, prints on their fur, those relate well to Zentangle because you need little compartments to do your designs.
Mhm.
But, you know, these were great.
A zebra or a giraffe would be really
Sure.
fun, wouldn't they?
And we have, you know, here's a crane, lots of feathers. So
Oh, wow.
Zentangle is,
It's a very expressive like a very personal, expressive.
it is,
kind of thing.
it is a different type of artist maybe that likes this realm of just kind of the spontaneous. So with what we have seen today, hopefully there's something that kind of sparks the interest of yours.
Right, right. Arlyn, you really have, I think, showed us just a lot of different ways to just kind of get in there and just kind of experiment a little bit. But you could do it as simple or as detailed as you want, depending on your skill level or your confidence level.
Sure.
You know, and I mean, obviously, guys, he's a great teacher. I think he'd be a great adult art teacher. I think you could really do. I bet you've inspired a lot of students over the
I
years.
hope so. And I mentioned earlier that art's something you can always come back to. Some of us, as our bodies age, we won't be able to do the sports and do some activities you're younger, but hopefully, you know, and again, plug for the arts. Hopefully we can always enjoy playing an instrument, picking up a pencil, sitting down to sketch. Things you can keep coming back to can always be a part of your life. So I hope I've inspired, encouraged, helped them find something that they can enjoy and maybe take some of the fear and apprehension about it. That was part of my lesson today. Is this is something that people need to come back to. I think as young children, we all have this energy and enthusiasm to make and create. And then as we grow up, we start noticing maybe there are some individuals that have kind of almost a natural talent ability. And then we decide that we're not that person. And then we just kind of push it off and just close the door. And so I'm wanting to kind of open some of those doors back up and let them revisit that this is something they can do.
Yeah, every kid, because, you know, your mom and dad hang your things up on the refrigerator or on the windows, or you have a special bulletin board. Yeah, and then you're drawing something and you look over and you're going, okay, never mind, I messed mine up. But I mean, it's true. We all can at least doodle and you know, just come up with something.
Well, let's put it this way. At the end of the year, we have high school students that look at their portfolio, and I hate for them to get rid of anything before they have a chance to share it with their family. Let them see what they've learned. But there'll always be the handful of assignments that they came back to. These were my favorites. This is what I love. And then they can kind of find out, what did I excel at? What do I really enjoy out of all these different projects? And then a lot of it, I'm sure, probably disappears, goes in the trash. But once you're willing to just jump in there and experiment, you'll kind of find your niche. Right.
Well, Arlyn, thank you so much for being on Trail Talk today. I hope you guys enjoyed this great lesson. I mean, just very fun, and plus getting a chance to see his creations, some of his painting. Really beautiful work. Thanks for bringing those to share with us. And Arts Explosion, he's going to be there, so if you want your kiddos to have a chance to learn from Arlyn,
come see us in July.
Yeah, go see it at the last week of this month. Check with Chisholm Trail Arts Council about that. And I think that's going to be a wrap for today. So, you know, whenever it's time to sign off, we say happy trails together.
Okay, let's do it.
Okay, so we'll see you guys next time. Happy
Happy trails.
trails.